If I were to describe Chapter 6, I would say it's a nightmare. Unfortunately. It builds on a lot of concepts we've already had in the game, but then adds restrictions, and honestly, it's hard. It's so hard. I need you guys to be patient with yourselves and the game. You will beat it, but for the majority of players, it will be impossible for you guys to finish this in, like, one night. This guide is going to be very, very long, so please use the timestamps as needed. I'm going to try and be as thorough as possible. So 666 and 667, without spoilers, involve 3 teams of characters going down 3 different paths, which I'll call towers. When you start each part, a screen will come up showing you 3 teams. The game will give you 2 to 3 characters that must be in a team, and it's non-negotiable, you can't change that. You can pick the remaining 2 to 3 characters to go on the 5-person team. But note the characters can only be in one team, so you'll have even more restrictions, but I'll talk about that in a bit. How these teams work is that when you're on a certain path, when a battle comes up, you can only use cards of that character on a team. So, if I have a tower team of Riddle, Azul, Malleus, Kate, and Trey, I can only use cards of those characters in battles. The main issue with these parts is having well-built cards for a lot of characters and not just your Oshis, which is why I think this chapter is considered so difficult. So if you haven't been building all of your boys, you are going to be in a world of hurt. Each team has their own story route and you can pick whichever one to start. It doesn't matter since you have to play through all of them. During each path, there will be 2 to 3 sections where players will be given a couple different options for a fight and they have to choose and complete the correct one in order to continue on to the next part. I'll be telling you guys which one is the right one so you don't waste time doing the unnecessary ones. As you know, I don't like suggesting specific units because I think it causes an unnecessary feeling of needing certain units to beat a boss. But, because these fights are so meta-heavy, I unfortunately have to give suggestions. I've made an SSR tier list for the required characters, but I want to make it clear what I call the worst options aren't bad. If these are the only SSRs you have, you should use them. My opinions are based around the spell triangle for the RBG spells and having advantages against the boss. If there's an advantage, I label it as the best choice. If it's the same color spell, it's okay. And disadvantages are in the worst, your mileage may vary tier. Now, let's start the guide with Tower 1 in 666. The enemies in this tower have Fire, Flora, and Void spells. In 1-7, the correct fight is PTM 11895. This enemy has Fire Flora spells, and the goal is to do as much damage as you can. In 1-1-1, the correct fight is PTM 9561. This enemy has Flora spells, and again, this fight is just doing as much damage as possible. The big boss for Tower 1 has Flora and Voice spells, so I would really recommend having strong fire units. The first fight with it is just surviving until the end, while the second is doing as much damage as you can in 5 turns. Its health is 47,000 each time. The game requires that you use Vil, Rook, and Epple in this tower. The other 2, as I mentioned, are up to you. I'm going to focus on team building more for the final boss because those fights can be terrible. My personal top choice for SSR would be Dorm Rook. He has an advantage and then the same spell as the boss. Also, he has duo magic with Epple who's required for this team, so it's very nice to have him. The okay choice is Dorm Vil. He has the exact same spells as the boss, so while there's no chance to do extra damage, he won't get you extra injured or something. These are the SSRs I would be cautious using. For full transparency, I did actually use Birthday Boy Vil because he's my only Vil SSR on JP. My thing with these units again is that if you fail to predict if the enemy will use a Void or Flora spell, it could cost you the battle. All of these units have a water spell which is weak against Flora. As long as you're cautious, you should be okay. But these aren't my top choices just because there's that worry of getting extra damage. The enemies in this tower have Water, Flora, and Void spells. In 1-7, the correct fight is PTM 11913. This enemy has Water and Void spells, and the goal is to do as much damage as you can. In 1-1-1, the correct fight is PTM 8812. This enemy has Flora and Water spells, and again, the fight is doing as much damage as possible. The big boss for Tower 2 has Water and Void spells, so I would recommend having strong Flora units. The first fight with him is surviving until the end, while the second is doing as much damage in 5 turns. Its health is 47,000 each time. The game requires you use Leona and Jamil in this tower. You can pick the other 3, and again, I'm focusing on building a team around the boss fight. My top SSR choices are Dorm Leona, Fairy Gala Leona, and either of Jamil's birthday cards. There's only one card in the OK category, which would be Scalding Sands Jamil, but as of now, he's not in the game, so I think you'll be fine. These are the quote-unquote worst options. I can't vouch for using any of these since I have Dorm Leona on JP, But again, if you use them, just be very careful and play it safe when it comes to guessing if the enemy's going to use a water or a void spell. The enemies in this tower have fire, water, and void spells. In 1-7, the correct fight is PTM 11769. The enemy has void spells, and the goal is to do as much damage as you can. In 1-1-1, the correct fight is PTM 6566. This enemy has fire and water spells, and again, this fight is doing as much damage as possible. The big boss for Tower 3 has fire and void, so I would really recommend having strong water units. The first fight with him is surviving until the end, what a surprise, while the second is doing as much damage in 5 turns, even more shocking. And what is this? Its health is also 47,000 each time. Gasp. I mean, you have to do a lot of fights, so technically they are different from each other, but they definitely follow the same guidelines, so. The game requires you use Riddle and Azul in this tower. You can pick the other 3, and again, focusing on a team for the boss fight. The best SSR is Dorm Azul. Very good card. My okay pick is Dorm Riddle. Dorm Riddle has 2 fire spells, so no advantages there, but also no extra damage. And finally, these are my be careful using cards. Again, they're not terrible, but you really need to think carefully before doing the Flora spells. Once you beat the boss of a tower, the characters for that path will be forced to rest for 3 hours in real-world time. You'll have to press a button in-game to start the timer. You can play the other paths while one tower team rests, but you can only have one timer going at a time. Let's say I finish up Tower 1 and go on to Tower 2 and finish 2 within an hour. I still need to wait for Tower 1 timer to finish before starting Tower 2's timer. This is a total of 9 hours of resting, which is why most people cannot finish this last update in a day. Among the other reasons, but this is also a really big reason why. Once all 3 path teams have rested and all the timers have completed, you can move on to 667. Luckily, when you start 667, you will need to form new teams, but it's still the same constraints as last time. You can't have the same team as 666 or change it up. The enemy spells are the same elements though, so at least you kinda know what you're getting into. My SSR picks for each tower are the same as they were in 666, but I would see if you can sneak a healer in your team. For Tower 1, in 119 the correct fight is PTM 854. This enemy has fire, flora, and void spells. Their HP is 30,000 and like the PTM battles before, this is a 5-turn do as much damage as possible fight. In fact, all the fights in this tower and the others are that kind except for the boss fight. So, there you go. Yeah, in 123 the correct choice is PTM 71. It's the same deal as 119, except this enemy's HP is 37,000. The boss fight makes you kill the enemy and there are infinite turns. Their HP is 50,000 and they have Flora Void spells. For Tower 2 in 119, the correct fight is PTM 749. The enemy has Water Flora spells and 36,000 HP. For 123, the correct one is PTM 65. They have Water Void spells and 43,000 HP. The boss is the same as 666, except now you have to kill him and you have infinite turns to do so. It has 50,000 HP. And finally, for Tower 3, in 119, the right fight is PTM 753. That enemy has Fire Water spells and 35,000 HP. For 123, it's PTM 94. It has Water Void spells and 43,000 HP. The boss, like the other towers, has 50,000 HP. It has Fire Void spells. Like before when the game forced us to take breaks, the same is happening here. After each tower, you'll be forced to set a timer. This time, though, it's only for an hour. But like before, only one timer can be going at one time, so you can play the other paths while you wait. After you've done the timer for each tower, you can move on to 668. I won't go over the overblot in this video just because it's already so long, but you'll still have to do the overblot battles after this. I know a lot of people are freaked out about Chapter 6, and I'm sure a lot of people will struggle, but I think for the most part, EN players will probably be more well-equipped than JP was. This was all thrown to us without any warning, but you guys have had time to prepare, and also see what worked and what didn't from JP players. So I think you guys will be better off than we were. Team composition for these 2 parts can be frustrating, and my biggest piece of advice is not to rush. I picked my cards willy-nilly, and that was the worst decision I have ever made in the game. The game will not let you repick. I finished the sections, and even once you beat it, it won't let you go back and change it to do it again. It's a one-and-done deal, so make sure you spend a lot of times picking your path teams. Your team comp for each tower is going to be heavily dependent on what units you have and how built they are. I would spread units around and not make one OP team, because I did that and whoops, all pain and suffering. I would really recommend checking out the Mira Heads Wiki or Twist Gameplay's Tumblr to do research on buddy bonuses and duo magics and all of that. I was gonna do that in this video, but this video is already so long. It's better for you guys to decide on your required cards and work from there. As long as you guys plan ahead and be patient, you'll be okay. Frustrated probably, but okay. Just keep at it and you'll get through it eventually. And with that, I need to go work on my own teams. I'll see y'all later. Bye!